Hi, I'm Kronda Adair, and I'm an out entrepreneur.
Hello, Al Bosses. Rhodes Perry here, and welcome to this week's episode of The Out Entrepreneur, a weekly podcast where I get to interview today's most inspiring LGBTQ bosses crushing it in business. And I am super thrilled to be interviewing Kronda, who is joining us here in our Portland-based studios. So welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And so a little bit about Kronda. She is celebrating 5 years in business. All right, that's amazing, with Carvel Digital. She has launched Working Websites, which is her organization's flagship 6-week online course to teach the basics of online marketing to non-technical business owners. And I think I would include myself in that category. And when she's not working, she can be found enjoying time at home with her wife and her 2 cats, yay cats, reading Dead Tree books, riding one of her 5 bicycles, that's very cool, and enjoying the postcard vistas of the state of Oregon, which is a beautiful, beautiful state. So if you haven't been out here, you should come and visit. So lots of cool stuff in that bio. So Kronda, can you just tell us a little bit more about your business and what makes it unique?
Wow, I think probably me. That's, I started out making WordPress websites, and that's not unique in the slightest, but I have my own spin and my own take on it after 5 years. So that's what I bring to it, is my own perspective, which, anyone who's talked to me for 5 minutes has probably heard me rant about something related to WordPress and how people use it or misuse it or don't use it. So I'm really focused these days on return on investment, on producing websites and marketing tools that really help people's businesses. Because I think in the beginning, in the first few years of my business, I made, small websites for really new entrepreneurs. And then the websites sat there and didn't do anything and didn't get updated and sometimes got hacked. And so I really started thinking about, okay, how do people make websites that are profitable? How do people do online marketing that actually grows business? And that's what I've been on my soapbox about for the last year and a half or so.
There's a ton in what you're doing, and there's a lot of people in your space, right? So I really liked what you were saying around what makes your business unique is you, right? There's a lot of people who tune into the show who are solopreneurs and trying to see what their unique value add is. And the whole theme of the show is to be your authentic self. And so I love that you kind of kicked off that first response with just saying you make it unique, right? And there's so much happening in online marketing and online businesses. I feel like every time I turn on Facebook, I'm, obviously the algorithms are targeting business owners.
The retargeting is insane.
I know, and I'm overwhelmed by it. And even more so, I'm overwhelmed by the next great thing in marketing and how to, like you said, make your website profitable. So I'm sure you can take this next question in a lot of different directions, but right now, given everything that's happening in online space and entrepreneurship and small businesses, what has you most fired up? What's the thing right now where you're like, you've got this 6-week course, which sounds awesome, and I'm like, I need to check this out. So is that the thing, or are there other things that you're really into right now?
That is the thing, because I think the message has not gotten to the general populace about how easy it is to use WordPress now. It's still hard because it's still overwhelming. WordPress has been around. It's a very mature software product. There's 1,000 different ways to do every single thing. But within that, I have sort of forged a path through the forest of, like, if you do it this way, this is the easiest that I've been able to do it. I literally spun up a WordPress site, like a really beautiful, full-featured 5-page site in 10 minutes last week as a demo for someone. So people don't know that's possible because they're not steeped in it like, WordPress professionals are. And so that's what I'm really excited about, and getting that message out to people to say, no, you don't have to use Wix and Squarespace and Weebly, because those things aren't going to grow your business. Everyone I've ever talked to, when they say, oh, I use Wix or Squarespace, the follow-on sentence is always because it's easier. It's never because I'm getting great results, because I'm getting tons of leads and new customers from it, because I'm really killing it with my online marketing. Like, that's never the conversation. It's always, it was easy. And I've never met a successful entrepreneur or a successful anybody who said, oh, yeah, it was easy.
Mm-hmm. Right. If it were easy, there would be way more of us, right? I think there was something I read recently where even though 57% of adults have business ideas, 2 out of 5 actually take the steps to start their business. And we all know the stats after 3 years, I think, of business. So you've celebrated 5 years. So you've overcome a lot of fear. You've taken a lot of risks. And I think that's like a good segue for the next question, which is kind of going back to your business's origin story. So you said that you kind of early on, you were designing websites, and I don't know if you were working for someone else, but like, what was that moment where you did have that business idea of like, hey, there's something to this whole WordPress thing. I figured out kind of an easier system, right? And I can teach this to other people. So tell us about how you got started. What was your origin story for your business?
Well, it's kind of a legend, and it is on the internet, so I can give you the link for the show notes. But when I decided to become a developer, it's because I was working in a tiny startup, and I was working as a project manager, and I didn't really know anything about coding. I was pretty good as a regular internet user, but I didn't. I remember asking our developer what CSS was, and he tried to explain it to me, and I still didn't understand. But I had a meeting with one of the freelance developers we were working with, and when he walked out of that meeting, I thought, wow, that looks good. That looks like a lifestyle where you can work wherever you want, and he's probably making 3 times as much money as I am. And I literally went to my desk and went to the PCC, Portland Community College website, and started looking at like, how do I do this? So I always had in mind, like, I want to do something, or I want to learn a skill that I can do as a business, because I've never really been good with having a boss. And then as far as like the catalyst, I worked for one agency after graduating from school for a couple of years, and then I was fired for quote unquote culture fit, which is a thing that happens to people who look like me in the tech industry. And I was like, oh, I guess it's time.
Yeah. That and definitely on culture fit. So you're here in the studio. You're a woman of color.
I'm Black.
You're queer.
For you listeners out there.
Right. So for listeners, and I always ask the question following up the origin story, especially if you feel like you were kind of like a square peg trying to fit into like a different shaped box, or I don't know, whatever that analogy is that I always mess up. But I think for you, having been fired literally for quote unquote not fitting in with culture, what are things that you do in your business to allow people who don't look like you, who may not come from your background, to feel welcome and to say, I want to work with Kronda because she gets me and I feel welcomed? Like, what are some of those things?
It's something I think about. I don't actually have a team at the moment. I've gone back and forth. Well, I have a support team who does sort of like maintenance things for me. But other than that, I don't have like employees. But it is something that I think about, because that is a direction that I'm going. I would like to have employees someday so that I can just focus on the things that I really like doing. Yeah. And I think because I'm a Black queer woman living in Portland, one of the whitest large cities in the U.S., I'm just every day much more aware of the things that make people feel othered and alienated, and I try not to do those things, and I fail sometimes. The word insane came out of my mouth earlier in this podcast, and then I immediately thought, oh, that's an ableist word. I shouldn't do that. So, if you go on my Twitter, the first tweet is, try to do good, show it up, apologize, try not to make the same mistake again. That's the job. I really don't have an image of myself as a quote unquote good person, just like a person who tries to do the least harm.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. And I always ask this question because in the work that I do when I'm not doing this, I'm trying to help leaders who don't quite get why really creating cultures of inclusion or belonging or whatever you want to call them really is important, other than, what gets me to the table is they see, oh, this is great for a return on investment. But it's so much more than that. And I think that for a lot of people who are on the show who have broken out, because a lot of our origin stories, for out entrepreneurs, is having worked for someone else, being like really talented at what we're doing, and then quote unquote not being a culture fit for a variety of reasons, right? And then just saying, whatever, like I know that I have this skill, I can start this business, I'm just going to do it. I'm already an architect of my own life. Why not do that in the business world? I'm saying all this, maybe not for the out bosses, but for people who have who are out bosses, who have employees, like really tuning into some of the strategies that our bosses are sharing, especially in response to this question, is really key. a lot of it is kind of common sense, where it's like we're leading with trying to be inclusive and to try to do the right thing, and knowing that like we're not perfect, we're humans, we're going to mess up. And it's like, what do you do in the moments when you mess up?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of, on my personal blog, I spent many years writing blog posts about sort of the things that happened and how people responded badly and what they could have done instead. So you can go to Kronda.com and
I love it. Well,
read those.
Yeah. Well, I'm definitely going to link to the origin story, and I should have done my homework and read that more closely, but thank you for sharing. We're going to talk a little bit about your LGBT identity and how that shows up in your business. And so I always lead off this part of the interview with asking if you could share an example where you may have felt in your business where you had to kind of like censor parts of yourself, maybe talk like not talking about your wife and all of your awesome bike trips that you do, because you might have been afraid of losing revenue or maybe ultimately losing that client. So before we chatted at the interview, you were like, I have a story. So would you mind sharing that? And I know that could feel a little vulnerable. The reason why I'm asking is that there are a lot of folks out who tune into the show who haven't quite started their businesses yet. And this is like a big part of the getting past the fear of just getting started, right?
Sure. So I'm going to preface this by saying that I'm over 40. I'm well into the mid 40s at this point. So my supply of fucks has been depleted for like many years. So take that with a grain. But so the short answer is I don't ever worry about that. All right. And I don't ever think about it. That's a place of real privilege for me, just in the space that I'm in my life and the relationships that I've developed. And everybody knows at this point, like you don't really talk to me for more than 5 minutes without finding out that I have a wife and we have cats, and you're probably going to see a picture of the cats, and it's all it's not directly in my marketing, but everything is linked. So I have a personal Twitter account, I have a work Twitter account, I have a personal blog, and I have a work blog. All of those things are linked together because I want people to be able to go and find out who I am, because I don't want to work with them. That's part of why you start your own business, is because you want to work with people that you like and that you can help. And so I want to make sure that, before we even think about starting to work together, they know what they're getting. And so, I mean, I pulled up my Twitter bio, which I don't think about much until someone points it out to me. But basically it says Portland WordPress developer, married to PDXJ. So then you can go to her profile and see that it's a woman, Black queer feminist, outrage, cats, and code. And then it says pro tweets, with my work account attached. So, and if you go to my work one, I think my personal Twitter is on there. So everybody knows up front, this is the deal.
Yeah. Yeah. And right.
And so the story is not particularly about queerness, but a few years ago I went up to the Ava Developer Academy in Seattle and spoke to that group. And one of the questions from one of the students was, hey, so I follow you on Twitter, on my personal Twitter. He's like, so do you have trouble getting clients? Because back when I was more active on Twitter, it was pretty, no fucks given. So my story about that is that I got into it with someone on Twitter over racial stuff, and I was trying to stop fighting on Twitter. So I was like, okay, I'm not going to do this. So I went to my blog, I wrote my blog post, I said my piece, I sent her a link. I'm like, I'm done. And then a few weeks later, I got a new client inquiry, and there's on the form, it says, how did you hear about me? And it said, well, I saw you fighting on Twitter with this woman that I happen to know that I don't like very much. And then I went to your blog and I was like, oh, I need a WordPress developer.
Yes.
And so, I tell that story to say the more that you are, the more you put yourself out there, the more you're going to draw the people in that you really want to work with. And you're going to repel the people who really you don't want anything to do with anyway.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much in that. And I think like the essence of it is something that I've talked with other business owners offline around, like not so much like what you want to do in your business, but who do you want to be in your business? And I think like not giving a fuck, right? As you framed it, where it's like, there's not enough time, right? And so, like you are authentically showing up as yourself. There's like a connection, which is, it's kind of different for baby boomers and traditionalists and any other generations that are older than that, right? Where there's such a separation of like, I have to behave this way professionally, and personally, like I'm going to do these things over here. And there's so much more of a blend with like Gen X, millennials, and younger, especially digital natives, I guess is the name for the youngest generation right now in the workplace. But it's like that blend is like, this is who I am and this is how I show up. And for you to talk about like racial justice and like standing up to someone, whatever the heck they were doing online, which is probably bad, right? And just kind of pushing back. There are other people that may not have had a voice or felt that they could do that, and they saw in you like something that really resonated in themselves, right? And like they came to you, right? Of this, or you were at this developing Ava development coding camp. I don't know, right? Okay, yeah. In Seattle, and people saw you online, right? And like you made the. I think it kind of goes back to like you never really know the impact that you're going to have when you just show up and you say the things that you're like. If I sit on my hands on this, like I'm compromising part of myself.
Yeah, and I think people who are in traditional workplaces deal with that so much every day, and that's hard as it is to have a business. You know, it's really, really hard. Yeah. But even on the worst days, it's like, well, I still get to be myself, and I still, you know, I think back to the work environments that I've been in where I did have to do all that censoring, and it's just not. It's not worth it to me personally, and it's actually harmful to your health to do that in the long term. So, you know, I did specifically a women of color in tech meetup that I spoke at, and they kept asking me questions about, well, what do you do, you know, if someone says something racist? And I said, well, I write an angry blog post and move on. And they were like, no, really, what do you do? And I'm like, that's what I do. Like, go look at my blog. Because I have work to do. Right. And there's a great Toni Morrison quote that I'm not going to try to recreate and screw up. But the essence of it is that racism is a function of, you know, distraction from your work. And there's always going to be another thing. Yep. And so I've had to learn to just keep focused on the work for the most part. And working for myself allows me to do that. So,
yeah. And to have, I mean, also kind of the emotional energy of like, this thing happened, I'm going to process it in a very public way, right? And that like, that's kind of cathartic for you. And yet like, and it's helping out a ton of other people who follow your blog or however they find you online. And that's also, again, like, you're probably impacting thousands, if not tens of thousands, however many, right? Kind of hard. Well, yeah. You can probably quantify it on your website.
I get, you know, it's great when I get feedback, whether it's on the personal or the business side. And I'm starting to, as I now am publishing more, right? Because I'm really focused on products and developing products. And so as I'm doing that more, like the best part is having finally launched this course that I've been working on for 2 years and having people actually go through the material and getting that feedback and watching their mindset change and watching them be empowered to do things that they thought were too hard before. Like that's what keeps you going. Earlier this week or last week, I had a guy come up to me at a meeting and he's like, oh, hey, you know, I met him like 2 years ago. And he said, oh, hey, it's great to see you again. Like, I think about you almost every day. And I was like, what? And he's like, I know, it sounds weird, but you told me to use 1Password and it changed my life. Because when I met him originally, it was in a business context and he's got several online properties and he wanted to show me something that he needed to log into his website for, and he couldn't do it. He's like, he couldn't get a hold of his wife, you know, to get the password. It was on a sticky note back in his, you know, this was having like a real impact on his life. And I was like, dude, you got to get your life together. And apparently he did and is much happier for it. So like those moments just make things worth it. Like, oh, people do actually listen to what I say sometimes and do something about it. And then it helps them.
Yeah. Yeah. And the fact that like that's the things that you're sharing come so easily to you, right? Like it's almost like, I feel like that's when you're kind of in your groove in your business where it's like, people really like, they need me to do these things. And like, yet it's so easy, right?
It is so easy. It's like, it's like breathing. It's the things that I do every day. And there's literally a tweet out there about me joking about having 1Password's baby that I reference all the time. But, you know, it makes a difference. Like how many things, especially as a tech professional, like that's what I do all day is log into things.
Yeah. Like it's like so many different things, right? Yeah. So thank you for sharing that strategy here. I'm sure it's going to help out a lot of people who tune in. And what is easy for you, just to kind of clarify too, is like not easy for the non-techie people like me. So I think that that's super helpful.
Yeah. And one of the biggest challenges has been trying to remember that beginner mindset as I try to explain these concepts and make sure that, okay, am I including everything? And that's why, as part of my course, I do a live coaching call every week where we get on and I answer questions. And that's my favorite part, because then I know, like, okay, this is what people are actually struggling with, and this is what came across well, and this is what I could improve on.
Yeah. I like that, the beginner's mindset. I think that that's also really valuable for folks tuning in who are trying to also develop online courses or products, is to remember, like, wherever you are at in your expertise, like, go back 20 years.
way
right?
back, yeah.
And try to tap into your younger
back
self.
to when I didn't know what CSS was.
Exactly, right? Yeah. There were people like me who still, think of me. Yes. So that's like kind of some of the harder challenges of being out in business, and thank you for kind of sharing some of the workarounds that you came up with there. So the show is really centered around empowerment. And so what I also like to ask guests, and I want to ask you, is kind of considering your lived experiences and some of the more challenges, especially when working for other people, what might be some of the superpowers that you have from your lived experiences, and in particular, like, to be out, to be a part of the Rainbow family? If there's anything that's kind of like uniquely added to being a business owner because of, like, I don't know, like the experience of coming out at a zillion different times, or, other things that might pop up for you.
Yeah, that's kind of a question where I have to do the going back to beginner's mind, right? Because as a teenager, being queer was like all I thought about and all I worried about, and all it was everything. It took up a lot of mental and emotional space. That's still true for a lot of people, different ages, different places in their life. So I think probably the most valuable thing I can say around that is that if you have any experience where you were a beginner and something was really hard and you pushed through to the point where you don't really think about it. And we all have that, right? If you can walk, then you learn to do something hard. If you can drive and you don't think that much about it, you learn to do something hard. We don't really think about those things because we do them all the time. And that can be true of absolutely anything. If you think WordPress is too hard and you go and you spend 30 days like going and working on your site, by the end of that 30 days, you're going to be doing things that were hard 30 days ago that are easy for you now. Yes. And that's true of whatever, be it like coming out in the workplace. It applies to literally everything. You cannot master something or become more comfortable with something unless you make it a habit and you build it into your life. And even the experience of doing that over and over again teaches you that when you're in the place where you think, I can't do this, it's too hard, you have those other experiences to know, like, oh, well, I thought that about X and now I can do X. So that's something I got from, going back to school. I was 34 when I decided to become a developer. And other than being, good at the internet, I could go on IRC. I didn't really have any experience with programming, and it was really tough. And I was going to school with people literally half my age. And I remember saying to one of my teachers, like, I don't know if I'm ever going to get this. And then several months later, I'm like making websites from scratch. And so when you go through that process, apply that mindset and that mentality and that persistence to everything that you do.
Yeah. I like what you were saying about just in that vein, persistence, and kind of setting out, like, for you to have that mindset shift of saying, I'm drawing on all these other experiences of challenging times where, like coming out, like being obsessed with like thinking about like your sexual orientation as a teenager and like how the world, well, on top of the fact of being a teenager where you're constantly thinking everyone's looking at you all the time and everyone's focused on you and really no one really is, and kind of layering like, whoa, wait, I'm different. There's something happening with my sexual orientation, and it's trying to find words around that. And then like you had like in your mid 30s, like, I want to go back to school. I want to code. I want to be a programmer, do web stuff. And it's like, the how part is the missing piece, but you had the intention, right? And so I think it's like that blended with what you're talking about, mastery, right? Where it's like, it takes something like 10,000 hours to be like considered a master at something, right? And so you put your time in, right? But you had to start with hour number one,
right?
Which is, probably the hardest one.
Yeah.
Because that's where all the self-doubt pops up of like, who am I to code, or what, all the all the self-talk that we tend to do.
Yeah. And the other piece of it is just taking action. I think I'm at this point in my business, I'm kind of in the middle between people who are just getting started and do a lot of, getting ready to get ready, right? Yeah. I need to have, 500 Instagram followers before I can do X or whatever. Like, the things that you do that aren't going out and getting customers. There's a lot of that that happens with new entrepreneurs. So I'm past that point. And then I'm also starting to hang out more with the people who are way ahead of me in that, they have real grown-up businesses. I went to an entrepreneur organization event earlier this month, and to even be in that organization, you have to be doing $250K a year. So I'm okay, these are big kids, and so it's good to be in that middle space, and I'm starting to recognize that the people who are really, really successful, it's because of the mindset they have. It's because of the habits they have. It's because of the daily actions that they take that get them to where their goals are. And so when you see that and then you look back over the newbies and you're like, oh, still getting ready to get ready, huh? Yes. It's and that's why, really successful people don't give away their time very easily, because there's so many people out there who, they're like, oh, let's have coffee so I can pick your brain, but they're not going to take any action. They're not going to do anything with that. And, most of the mentors that I've had who have really helped me get to the place where I am today, I've paid, number one. And whenever I come back to them and say, oh, I did this thing that you said and it actually worked, and they're over the moon about it. And now I understand why. It's because so few people actually take action on things.
Yeah. I think you had all of your follow-up has been amazing. I really love the getting ready to get ready phrase, and then also not throwing away your time. And maybe that links to saying yes to everything, where I think especially for newer folks getting started in business, it's all of these opportunities start coming to you. And I think if you're not centered around what it is that you do, your unique value add, it's really tempting to say yes to everything. And that can get you in a lot of trouble too.
Yeah. And it's taken me the whole 5 years to figure out that okay, this is my lane. I'm going to stay in it. Yeah. And I talked to someone just this week who, she called me because she's like, I'd quit my soul-sucking tech job. And I'm like, cool, congratulations. And now she wants to go out and be a consultant. And she just has all of the mistakes are just waiting there. It's like she's standing at a precipice of, and I try to be like, well, maybe you should go this way. Maybe you should get a business coach, maybe, because she's like, I can do all these things. I can do everything. And I'm like, yeah, but you don't really want to do everything, because that's not how you, that's not how you win.
Right.
And so that's why, it's taken me a while to get really firm and sort of this is the way I do WordPress, right? These are the tools. This is the suite of things that make my life easy. And if you want to do it a different way, that's cool, but you need to find someone else to help you, because, a lot of people come to me and basically say, well, the analogy I came up with earlier today was I want to carry some water and I have this leaky, rusty bucket. Can you help me carry more water in my leaky, rusty bucket?
Yep.
And they'll be like, no, but I have this super shiny bucket with no holes in it. And if you want to use that, then let's go.
Yeah. It's like the turnkey solutions versus the customized, I'm going to do everything and be everything to everyone. And I think that's a really, really important reminder, especially for folks who are tuning in, where you're still kind of in those early days of your business, or you haven't even started yet, right? The value of involving people who've already, they have the strategies and solutions for you. And I think that's the value of investing in business coaches. And I like what you were talking about, paying people who have that skill set.
I totally get that when people are starting out, they don't have a lot to invest. Totally. I really get that. But don't think that means you should just ask people to do things for free because you can't afford to pay them.
Yes.
Bring something to the table, or figure out a way to do it yourself or to do without until you can afford to pay people, because you want people to pay you for the thing that you're doing. So karmically, that's really not going to work out for you, first of all.
Yes. Yeah.
And so when I was starting my business, I bartered for a logo with a friend of mine who's a brilliant graphic designer. I made him a little website. He made me a logo. I have headshots I still use that I bartered with a photographer friend of mine. I did some web work for him. He gave me some great headshots. Like you have things to offer besides money. So that's one way to go about it. And you might be focused on things that you don't really need to actually get customers. One of the things in the conversation I had this week, she's like, I'm meeting with a branding person. I'm like, you don't have a brand. Like, you're a zygote. You're a little business zygote. You just need to go get customers, figure out what it is you want to do and who you can help and how you can help them. And then you can have a brand.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's really key as well, is in those early days of like doing things that align with your skill set, and especially like in where you think you want to go. And as you continue to do it, you start to see your magic. You start to see like why people are attracted to working with you, and you can, I think, like give yourself a couple of years, in the beginning, not to kind of compartmentalize yourself into doing something that you think is what you do versus like why people are coming to you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
A couple more questions on this. The first is, kind of considering some of the challenges of truly being authentic in the work that you're doing, especially if you're working in places that aren't Portland, Oregon, right? And then also the unique superpowers that we have. What might be some advice that you would give people who are just, whether they're working for someone else or they're working for themselves, just to be a little more authentic in the work that they do?
I think the best advice I could give would be to publish and expose your process. Since I started teaching and really focusing on education, and the origin of that, by the way, is that for the first 4 years of my business, every single year I'd have one person come to me and ask for my help. And I would say, okay, where's your website hosted and where's your domain registered, and trying to get access to the things, and they wouldn't know. And they wouldn't say, well, my other developers set that up and I don't know. And literally, like, some friend of theirs or some previous developer would own their domain, which is the equivalent of, if you bought a house and you let the real estate agent sign the papers, then they own your house. And that's the level sort of ignorance that I was running into that's so dangerous, like giving away your online business. So that's when I decided, like, okay, I need to do something to sort of educate people around this so that they're not getting taken advantage of by people. So starting to publish and really expose your process. Publishing makes you authority. I mean, we say someone wrote the book on something. And if you talk to anyone who's really into marketing, they'll say, well, write a book. Like, it's good, even if you're not doing it for the money, like, writing a book is a good marketing tool because you can say, I wrote the book on this.
Yes. 100%.
And so my course started out as, I was just going to write an ebook, and then I realized nobody's going to do anything with that because it's websites and people need a lot more hand-holding. So that blossomed into what it is today. But share your knowledge, and don't worry about giving away your knowledge, because the reality is that people can't do what you do. You can show them how to do it, and they can try to do it themselves and figure out how bad they are at it, and then they will come back and hire you.
Yeah. It's when you show them how to do it, they kind of know enough to be dangerous, and then they're like, we need to work with you, right?
And I literally have like 2 clients from the past 2 months where that happened. They came to a webinar, they went to a course, and they were like, this is great, I'm going to go do this. And then they got in trouble and said, I can't do this.
Yeah. I think that's good advice. I mean, like you said, just kind of putting your work out there and publish, because then, as you said, like, you become an authority, you're a thought leader. And there's a whole other, things start opening up for you. And it's kind of, as you publish, it's yours, you're giving away this knowledge, you're constantly learning new things too. So I think, like, if you can step away from that scarcity mindset of like, oh, this is my thing, and I know I have this unique way of doing WordPress, and WordPress is going to change, the world's going to change, and you'll change with it, and you'll have more to add, right? And I think that's just a really, really good reminder.
And try not to get caught in perfection paralysis, because that's a huge barrier for a lot of people, where they're like, well, I can't put this out until it's perfect. And so there's so much to say about that. But if you can get out of the mindset of like, I'm making this course, and that requires doing a lot of video and a lot of like talking into the camera, which is not a thing that I did before. The first module that I produced, I think it took me 150 hours to fully like produce, plan, edit, and publish all of the content for 1 week of lessons.
Yes.
And then, by the third of the fourth week, I could, spend 1 day planning and spend 1 day filming and then spend a couple of days editing and be done. Yeah. So, and they're not perfect.
Yes.
There's a ton of, me smacking and clearing my throat and cats in the background whining for dinner. And, they're not perfect, but I'm getting the information out there and then, I'll improve them later.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's great. And on the topic of mindset, that's where we're going to go, the business mindset. So we've touched on this already. And so Kronda, I'm interested for you, kind of like thinking about the imposter complex or the imposter syndrome, the things like, especially probably when starting out of like, I'm not good enough, like I need to get ready, all of that kind of stuff. Like, did that show up for you? And if it did, like, how did you work around it?
It didn't show up a whole lot because I got fired and I had to go make money.
That's a great motivator, right?
I don't recommend that as as a jumping off point, right. But it did, sort of kick my ass into gear.
Yeah.
And that thing about, saying yes to everyone, like that's a real thing and you are going to do it if you're starting out. But like the very first client I got, I knew that she was a terrible client.
Yeah.
And so I set a goal of like, how long is it going to take me to replace the income from this client so that I can fire her?
Yeah.
And it took me 8 months.
Nice.
So just like always be thinking about like the next level that you want to get to and going towards that. I think the most important thing about business mindset is that you are a problem solver. That's what business is. Like, I have the problem that it's 27 degrees outside when I leave the house this morning, so I'm going to solve that by putting on this down jacket, right? I don't buy a down jacket, I buy warmth on a 27-degree day.
Yep.
So understand that you're selling the solution to a problem, and the manifestation of that solution is your thing, product, service, whatever it is. And so don't sell the product, sell the outcome.
Yeah, the transformation. I think when people first get started, it's focusing on, this is what I do, and like talking about your process. No one cares about your process. It's like, how are you going to transform your client? Like, what's the magic that's going to make them go from wherever they're at to the kind of like, hopefully they have the vision of where they want to be. And if they don't, hopefully you can add like, here's where you want to be.
Right.
And I have the magic to make that happen. And if they're really curious, they'll ask you about your process after the fact.
Yeah.
Right.
And you're going to have to you're going to solve problems for other people, and you're also going to have to solve problems in your business like constantly.
Every second.
So if you can't develop the problem solving mindset, then you're not going to make it.
Yeah.
Period.
So on that, like with problem solving, when you get stuck in business, right, and you're thinking about kind of like reaching out for help, like who are you reaching out to help? Like who are your go-to people?
So that is an awesome question, because entrepreneurship can be really lonely. And one of the best things that I ever did was back to the mentorship piece. I joined a program called WP Elevation. And so that's a program for WordPress professionals to kind of help them have better businesses. And so now I'm part of this community that is now, I think, almost 800 other people who do, something similar to what I do, something around WordPress and online business. Yeah. And so that's really one of the first places I go is if I have, in fact, I posted last night, I was like, I'm having this issue and I just need to rant about it. So getting some peers, getting some peers and or mentors, whether that's in a Facebook group or a Slack or in person, and having those people who understand the challenges of business where you don't have to be on, because, in public and on Twitter and whatever, a lot of times you're like, you want to present yourself as like, I totally know what I'm doing, when really you're like, this is fine, dog, right? With the like, and everything's on fire around you. So you need to develop your group of people that you can go to when things are on fire around you. And then we'll be like, here's a bucket and there's no holes in it. And you can pour some water on it.
That's like such a good analogy. So we could probably talk about mindset for a whole other hour, and we don't have that time right now. I wanted to take a quick sponsorship break. And when we come back, we're going to get the opportunity to get to know Kronda a little bit better, gain some insights on how we can bring our whole selves to work, and then learn one way that we can stay in touch with Kronda after our conversation. Aspiring out bosses, are you struggling with taking that first entrepreneurial leap? Does the imposter syndrome prevent you from getting started? Have you considered seeking support, but you're just not sure where to turn? Look no further. The Out Entrepreneur now offers a coaching and mentorship program where you can access support and strategies to shift your mindset from employee to entrepreneur. If you're looking for accountability and a mentor who successfully busted out of the 9-to-5 lifestyle, let's schedule a time to talk today. Visit www.outentrepreneur.com and look for show notes from today's episode to schedule a call. Again, the URL is www.outentrepreneur.com. Together, let's welcome you to the wonderful world of being an out boss. All right, so welcome back, bosses. We are now jumping into our bonus round. So, Kronda, are you ready?
I'm as ready as I'll ever be.
Okay, all right. So, do you have a mantra or quote that you reference that helps you stay motivated in your business?
The first one that came to mind was, I'll sleep when I'm dead. But I don't feel like that's as inspiring as I want it to be.
I think it's true.
Well, the thing that I've been most obsessed with in the last year that's actually useful to people is process and documentation. That is the difference between small struggling businesses and large successful ones.
Yeah, I think that's key, setting up your systems and trying to automate as much as possible, especially if you are a solopreneur. So can you share one personal habit that helps you master yourself in your business?
One thing that I realized recently is that I've finally reached a point where I don't allow my emotional state to dictate what I do. So I have a process for planning out what I need to do based on the goals that I've set for the next 90 days. And so I always know what I should be working on at any given moment. And so things happen. I might be angry or sad or, distracted or whatever, but I know what I'm supposed to be doing and I do it anyway. And I think that kind of separates like successful entrepreneurs from people who don't make it.
Yeah, I think that's true. I love that you do the 90-day goals too, right? So kind of like looking into the future, understanding that everything is going to change super fast and still trying to be clear on like where you want to be in the next 3 months.
Yeah, and I got that specifically from Todd Herman, who's a business coach and an athletic coach, and he helps people with mindset and high performance. And so his site is toddherman.me, and his program is the 90-day year.
Awesome. We'll definitely include that in the show notes. Can you name one thing that you readily delegate in your business to stay focused on what you're good at?
So I'm all about delegation, but I'm doing everything myself right now because I'm in this launch mode. But really, like I have a list of, anything repetitive. So I had a virtual assistant for a while, and the first thing was I was sending out a newsletter every week. And so the first thing I did was, create a process around this is what happens to get the newsletter out the door, so that then all I had to do was write it and send a link to a Google Doc, and then the rest was taken care of.
Nice. Yeah.
So, and that process still exists. And so when I get my next virtual assistant, I'll hand that off again.
Yeah. It's nice that you're keeping a list of the repetitive things too that you're doing, where it's like, this is not me wearing the entrepreneur hat. It's me kind of doing kind of like the task management or the technician kind of stuff. Right. And I think that that's also really key, for newer folks. Like, you might be doing everything and it's really good for you to understand the processes, but the things that are repetitive, there's probably some software out there and you would know best.
Yep.
Or, you can hire someone to do that kind of less glamorous work.
Yeah. Always be working to fire yourself.
Yeah.
And or promote yourself, I guess, to the next level.
Right. I love that. Okay, so 2 more questions for you. Can you share one piece of advice to inspire the next generation of out bosses to take that first entrepreneurial leap?
Ask forgiveness, not permission. There's nothing to lose by trying, really. Like, what is it? So I have a story actually around this. I was doing some research for a module that I'm working on right now, and there's a great site called Thrive Themes, and they do lots of cool marketing stuff, and they do these website reviews. And so I found one of these website reviews, and it's a 10-minute video, and like, here's how you could change this homepage to be more effective. And this is like, people submit their websites to be picked to get this done, right? So This is 10-minute video with these great tips that are really easy to implement because of the tool that they make. And then I went to the website that they mentioned, and it looked exactly the same. And the review was posted 9 months ago. And this website looks exactly the same. Yeah. So are you going to be complaining about the same problems a year from now?
Yeah.
Like, just take action. Just start doing something.
Yeah. And it's amazing, people who go to kind of like the business forums and they spend weeks kind of with entrepreneur coaches and they get all these strategies and then it's not even one goes into implementation. So that's I think that makes or breaks people is just like do the things like when people give you good advice, you might not be able to do all of it right away, but just choose one thing.
Yeah.
Right. That's going to get you to whatever your priority goal might be for those 90 days or however you break up your goals. Okay, so really, really amazing interview. So thank you so much for your time. Can you share with us one way that we can stay in touch with you and learn more about your business?
So I guess the central point of my digital existence right now is carveldigital.com. And so you can reach pretty much anything else. And I always tell people, you can really just Google my first name and find out anything that you want to know about me.
I love it. Okay, so we'll definitely have those in the show notes. So for Outbosses, thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode. It is always my privilege to connect with you and so many inspiring Outbosses like Kronda. So for details from today's conversation, definitely check out those show notes. You can find them at www.outentrepreneur.com. And as a next step, subscribe to the podcast, consider leaving a rating and review in iTunes, and be sure to share the podcast with a friend or a loved one. And for now, keep being your authentic selves 100% of the time.